Okay, I said I was done with Tucker Carlson. I'm gonna dive again into this one, and I'm gonna see how far I can make it before my brain melts.
And welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. Happy Good Friday, if you can say that. Always a sort of mixed day, and today was no different. A radical black nationalist drove a car into two police officers near the Capitol in Washington this afternoon. One of the officers was killed along with a suspect. Now, what's interesting, and there's still much we don't know about this, we know very little, but this is one high-profile murder that didn't somehow set off an avalanche of hysterical media attacks on an entire racial group. You didn't see stories about how all black people are bad or blackness is a virus.
It was literally covered in the media all across the board. Literally covered. The details you have from it are literally from mainstream media. The reason why it didn't launch into a full-blown escapade of black people being wild is not because the media and the narrative is to save everybody and it's all about white supremacy. It's because, and I fucking quote, how many black people do that shit regularly? As a matter of fact, let's take it a step further and give you the benefit of the doubt and argue on your terms. What led up to him deciding to do that? Was he arrested? No, he died, right? It was one guy. If you had 75 million black people roll up on the Capitol in cars and drive them straight through, then we can have a conversation on that. But he died, right? Injured at best, arrested, immediately condemned. Nobody's come out in support and saying that these things were okay. Nobody is excusing this behavior. Nobody's even remotely speaking about it because it's over. Because unlike the QAnon insurrection, the guy who did it is gone. And nobody else is following in those footsteps or making that out to be something bigger than it was. So why on earth does Tucker Carlson feel the right to be able to say these things on live television with this like pretentious security that these things are okay to say? I wonder, perhaps it's linked to that thing that you keep hiding from. That you, sir, do support the idea that whiteness is a virus and that white people are nuts. And they do things because they know that the law won't come after them as hard as they do for minorities. I wonder. Perhaps we should take a look into that and do a deeper dive into Tucker Carlson. Oh, wait. You already got shit on by John Oliver and pretty much any American and or human being on this earth that knows, and to repeat the goddamn line, you are not a journalist nor anything related to news. You are purely entertainment, and no reasonable person would take Tucker Carlson seriously. Dick.
And thank God. That stuff is garbage. It's poison. All decent people hate it. Attacking entire races is evil no matter what the race is. It's really hurting the country, and the people in power should stop doing it. Today, for once, they didn't do it.
He didn't just say that after supporting Trump for saying all Mexicans are... That was a nice segment. You know, you would love for me to continue. I'm going to continue on for like 2 more minutes, but I'm done with it. I'm done with this. He's a fucking pighead.
Thank God for small blessings. But that doesn't mean our leaders turned down the opportunity to leverage the tragedy. Of course they did. Ilhan Omar immediately called for gun control, even though the assailant apparently didn't have a gun, but just a knife. She's not a genius, as we've noted before.
So if the suspect didn't have a gun, then perhaps she's talking about gun control because of the other mass shootings that we've had that week.
Then the usual experts told us the lesson was we need even more barbed wire around the Capitol. It's too open to the public, they said. To keep our democracy safe, we must wall off voters from the leaders who supposedly represent them.
No normal citizen can walk into their mayor's office and just be like, yo, what's poppin'? You gotta set up an appointment. Bro, if people keep breaking into the Capitol, maybe we need to fortify the Capitol before some crazy guy just runs up in there and just shoots up the... Maybe if we had more barbed wire and more like defenses, maybe the QAnon insurrection wouldn't have been as bad. Are you fucking serious? You cannot be this bad, Faith. You'd have to have swallowed your entire soul into the pits of hell to be this bad, Faith. Like, you couldn't have graduated high school with these type of arguments. Holy shit.
Well, that's already happening, of course, across the country, both physically in the green zone style barriers you suddenly see everywhere around government buildings, and also on a far deeper...
Because of the insurrection? Are you fucking kidding me? Are we all pretending that that didn't happen? That was this year, yo. And so much shit has happened since January that we kind of forget that the insurrection was 3 months ago. Almost exactly. If I went live yesterday, it would have been exactly 3 months ago. Like, that's not a long period of time. Why is it that these people just say this shit all the time? Like, the Democrats want to do this thing, but nobody's done this thing in 20 years. Like, motherfucker, I was alive 20 years ago. That shit shouldn't be happening no more.
Deeper level, on a level that can't be undone as quickly as offense. In a democracy, the people rule. If voters want something done over time, it happens. That's what self-government is. But what do you call a system in which all the really important decisions are made by big companies without any reference at all to what voters want? Well, that is not democracy. It's corporatocracy.
And saying he's going to talk about corporatocracy, knowing corporatocracy is how Trump came to power.
And it's starting to look a lot like what we have now. Here's the latest example. Major League Baseball announced today it's pulling two of the biggest events in sports, the All-Star Game and the MLB Draft, out of the state of Georgia. Now, why is Major League Baseball weighing in on this? Why is it doing it? Well, because voters in the state of Georgia made a decision that the Biden administration doesn't like. And as with so many big corporations...
Voters did not make that decision. Voters did not want it. If voters wanted it, you wouldn't have the corporation coming out in
Major League Baseball believes it now has veto power over the democratic process.
No, it doesn't. It says you did something that was wrong, and because of that, we don't want to support you anymore. That's capitalism.
And by the way, it may have veto power. We'll find out. In the case of Georgia, the state passed a law to reduce voter fraud. That law requires voters to provide some form of identification before they cast a mail-in ballot. That identification could be a driver's license or free state-provided ID. Georgia makes it pretty easy to prove who you are. There's nothing crazy about this law. In fact, it's hard to believe.
Yes, there is, and you know you're skipping over all the nuances and the little shit that makes it almost unbearable and clearly a demonstration of voter suppression as opposed to strengthening the elections.
I believe it wasn't already on the books in Georgia. It should have been. But when it was proposed, it sailed through the State House. Georgia's House of Representatives approved this bill by a 25-vote margin. The state Senate by a vote of 34 to 24. So unlike, say, Obamacare, it wasn't a squeaker. And you can see why. Nationally, the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with it. They support
No, they do not. The majority of Americans do not support it because the majority of Americans do not back the guy who set this all in motion. You are all creating this out of your own fear that if elections were just straight up open, then nobody would vote for Republican. No Republican would win an election. Remember, the guy that you like so much said that shit out loud. If we had universal mail-in ballots, if everybody could vote, Republicans would never win another election. Because it's stupid enough for you to understand that more people are Democrats than Republicans just out of the pure necessity of, ew, look at the vile shit that you're doing. Not because of policy, but because of ideology and moral, like, ineptitude to not see the glaring comparisons. Yes, there are obvious problems with the Democratic Party and their corporate is like the corporate elite and how they all lay in bed. We can have that conversation, but there's jack shit to do about that law and the response to it. If a state passes a law that says black people shouldn't be allowed to do this because X, Y, and Z, but it's not racist, or not even to say black people, let's say it implicitly implies black people in some form of fashion, right? Immediately, what I could say as a capitalist, if I have a big stake in that state, I'm not doing business there anymore. Why the hell would you do something like that? I don't want to be based in a place that has that much like hatred for a certain group of people.
Mandatory photo ID for voting. According to a recent poll by the AP, fully 72% of people in this country believe that required IDs are a good idea. And why wouldn't they think that? You already have to show an ID when you fly in a plane or drive a car, open a checking account, hold a job, live in an apartment, or get a vaccine. But you
do not need to show an ID to get into an apartment. I'm not even sure about this all the way through, but I don't think you even need an ID for a vaccine.
Don't need one to vote? Come on. It's ridiculous. In fact, it's worse than ridiculous. It is sinister. Anyone who opposes voter ID laws is encouraging voter fraud, which is to say...
That's a lie. That's a lie. Because we already looked at how we already covered that. Please go to the YouTube if you're interested. I already covered how like voter ID laws can be racist and have been used in racist ways before for voter suppression of minorities. That's a lie.
Encouraging the destruction of democracy.
And there's the hyperbole. They're encouraging the destruction of democracy. So if Democrats are rigging all the elections and Republicans are the only ones playing it fair, that sounds a lot like the left is going crazy and only the right can save you. Only I can save you. I'm waiting for the fascists. I'm waiting for a stronger, more competent fascist to use this energy and completely steamroll 2024 and launch us directly into Fourth Reich at this point.
It's that simple. And you can now put Major League Baseball in that category. Now, baseball was supposed to be America's pastime. Happy, unifying, fundamentally non-political.
How did baseball become so divisive? Yeah, I'm going to end it here just because I'm going to end it on this form right here. Ladies and gentlemen, do you remember the whole thing about black baseball players not being allowed to play in the Major League Baseball League? Major League Baseball? Do you remember that? Do you remember Jackie Robinson and the whole thing surrounding him? Here's a clue for you. It's a fucking clue for you. Since people like to say, you talk too much about this, that, and the other. (1947). Nancy Pelosi was 7 years old when black people got the right to play in baseball. Okay, I'm not going to do that, obviously. Yeah, some of these people, wow, Nancy Pelosi just pops up right there. Some of these people are still in politics today. So when did Major League Baseball become so divisive? When it fucking started. Racial segregation in professional baseball was sometimes called a gentleman's agreement, meaning a tacit. Is that how you say that word? I just haven't seen that word in such a long time.
Tacit.
It is tacit. Okay, sorry. Understanding, as there was no written policy at the highest level of organized baseball, the major leagues. But a high minor leagues vote in 1887 against allowing new contracts of black players within its league sent a powerful signal that eventually led to the disappearance of blacks from the sport's other minor leagues later that century, including the low minors. After the line was in virtually full effect in the early 20th century, many black baseball clubs were established, especially during the 1920s to 1940s, when there were several Negro leagues. The color line was broken for good when Jackie Robinson signed with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Both Robinson in the National League and Larry Doby with the American League's Cleveland Indians appeared in games for their teams. By the late 1950s, the percentage of black players in major league teams matched or exceeded that of the general population. The Boston Red Sox waited until 1959 because people didn't want to sign black players. So I wonder, when did baseball get so so divisive? Since its fucking inception, you dipshit.